In one of the most dramatic moments of the 2025 Formula One season, Yuki Tsunoda's qualifying lap at Imola turned into a terrifying spectacle. His Red Bull RB21 flipping violently after catching the curb at turn 6, slamming into the barriers, and skidding through the gravel upside down. The crowd gasped. The cameras cut. And for a few heart-pounding seconds, there was nothing but silence. When Tsunoda finally emerged, walking under his own power, relief washed over the paddock. But beneath the relief lies a deeper story. One of pressure, risk, and a team desperately trying to steady its ship mid-season. Because while Tsunoda may have survived the crash physically unscathed, the psychological and strategic aftermath could be far more damaging for both the driver and Red Bull Racing. The Japanese driver's own admission of shame, his confession of unnecessary heroics, and Red Bull's silence in the immediate aftermath only deepened the mystery. Why was he pushing so hard? Why has Red Bull remained tight-lipped? And is this the beginning of something darker unraveling within the team's 2025 campaign? If you're passionate about F1 and want the full picture behind the headlines, subscribe now, because what's really happening behind the garage doors at Red Bull could change everything. Let's break this down. Yuki Tsunoda's crash at Imola is more than just a moment of chaos in qualifying. It's a microcosm of the pressure cooker environment in modern Formula One, especially within a Red Bull Racing setup that has grown increasingly ruthless and arguably unstable in the wake of internal changes, driver swaps, and mounting performance expectations. While Tsunoda emerged physically unscathed, the incident peeled back the layers of a complex drama unfolding both on and off the track. Let's begin by unpacking the moment itself. During Q1 at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, Tsunoda was preparing for what should have been a relatively straightforward flying lap. The Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari, Imola, is a narrow, fast, and unforgiving track. Mistakes here aren't minor. They're catastrophic. At turn 5, known as Villeneuve, Tsunoda clipped the inside curb while carrying immense speed, reportedly over 240 km per hour. This small misjudgment caused the Red Bull RB21 to bottom out violently. The result? Instant loss of control, a snap spin, and then something rarely seen in modern F1, a complete flip. The RB21's chassis lifted off, rotated, struck the catch fencing, and then bounced back onto the gravel trap, landing on all four wheels, upside down briefly, before coming to rest in a battered but intact state. The footage is jarring. Fans can be seen shielding their eyes. Track marshals sprinted to the car. Red flags flew immediately. Yet somehow, Tsunoda emerged from the wreck. No visible injuries. No limp. He even waved to fans, climbed into the medical van, and walked into the paddock a few minutes later. The halo device, the catch fencing, the runoff zones, all did their job. Sky Sports' Anthony Davidson summed it up perfectly. Everything did its job. But while the FIA can breathe a sigh of relief that safety measures worked, Red Bull cannot breathe quite as easily. Because this crash doesn't live in a vacuum. It's the second major incident involving Tsunoda in just a handful of races. In Jeddah, during the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend, Tsunoda also suffered a high-speed crash during practice. The incident left the RB21 severely damaged and his crew scrambling to prepare the car in time for qualifying. Fast forward to Imola, and now we have a pattern. The bigger question isn't whether Tsunoda is reckless, it's why he's taking these risks at all. To understand that, we need to look at the context surrounding his unexpected promotion. Yuki Tsunoda began the season not as a Red Bull Racing driver but as part of the RB Junior team. Yet, only 2 races into the 2025 campaign, Red Bull made a shock decision. Liam Lawson, tasked with partnering Max Verstappen, was dropped. The official reasoning: inability to get to grips with the RB21 during the Australian and Chinese Grand Prix. But behind the scenes, insiders whispered about politics, impatience, and a Verstappen-dominated culture that leaves little room for nurturing new talent. In came Tsunoda, promoted mid-season, dropped into the most high-pressure team on the grid, tasked with not just surviving, but proving he deserved to be there. It's a familiar Red Bull narrative. Drivers being shuffled, promoted, or axed at breakneck pace. But in Tsunoda's case, the stakes were even higher. He's not a rookie, he's not an outsider. He's someone who's spent years in the Red Bull system, yet never quite shaken the label of being too hot-headed, too inconsistent. And now, as teammate to Max Verstappen, he's not just fighting for points, he's fighting to stay in the seat. This brings us back to the crash. Tsunoda later admitted he was trying to be a hero in Q1. He was attempting to set a competitive lap time with just one flying run, a strategy that's aggressive even for seasoned veterans. He pushed too hard, too soon, without fully understanding the changes made to his car during practice sessions. He said, "I was just very ashamed. It was really stupid. Pushing unnecessarily hard." It's a rare level of candor from a driver. But it also points to something deeper. A driver who is mentally burdened, emotionally stretched, and trying to do the impossible. Outperform in a car he barely understands, with a team that may not fully back him, under the shadow of a teammate who is arguably the most dominant figure in F1 history. There's a psychological cost to driving for Red Bull, and Tsunoda may be paying that price. Let's examine the technical side now. Why did the RB21 flip in the first place? F1 cars are designed to be extremely low to the ground to maximize downforce. However, this also means they're vulnerable to bottoming out, when the car's floor makes contact with the track surface. At high speeds, hitting a curb can send shockwaves through the chassis, upsetting the balance and throwing the car into a spin. That's exactly what happened. But the severity of Tsunoda's flip suggests the car setup was perhaps on the razor's edge. Engineers will no doubt be investigating whether the ride height was too low, or if the suspension geometry failed to absorb the curb's force. There are even murmurs that the RB21's new aerodynamic package, which has been designed for maximum top-end speed, sacrifices too much in terms of stability through the medium-speed corners, of which Imola has many. In other words, Tsunoda's crash might not have been entirely his fault. Now, let's add another layer: Red Bull's complete radio silence in the aftermath. While Tsunoda spoke to the media and shouldered the blame, there was no official comment from Red Bull Racing. No message of support. No technical breakdown. No tweet. Compare that to how Mercedes, McLaren, or even Ferrari respond in such situations, with statements, assurances, and gratitude for safety. Red Bull's silence speaks volumes. Could it be that they were caught off guard? Or perhaps they're already looking at Tsunoda not as a long-term solution, but as a placeholder. It's important to remember that Red Bull has a bench of talent waiting in the wings. Imola Iwasa is excelling in Super Formula. Dennis Hauger continues to make a name in F2. And let's not forget Liam Lawson, who, despite being dropped, still lurks in the background as a potential mid-season call-up. Which brings us to the internal dynamic. Max Verstappen runs the show at Red Bull. His input shapes car development. His preferences guide strategy. And his dominance ensures that the second seat is always in flux. No driver since Daniel Ricciardo has managed to last more than a couple of seasons alongside Verstappen. Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Sergio Perez. They all faltered under the weight of expectations. Tsunoda now finds himself in the same position. What makes his case different is that he's already showing signs of being overwhelmed. The admission of shame. The confession of being too aggressive. These are not signs of a confident driver. These are warning lights flashing on a dashboard of a career that could spiral fast if not managed correctly. So now we ask you, will Tsunoda's Imola crash mark a turning point in his career, or the beginning of the end of his Red Bull journey? Let me know what you think in the comments. Was this the result of driver error? Or is something much more troubling going on behind the scenes at Red Bull Racing?